Dan, glad to have you in. We've been talking about it in the offseason. We talked about it during the season. We talked about it once Aiden got hurt. The Lions had to make a move. How does it feel for you that the Lions and Brad Holmes seem to have yet again gotten it right?
Yeah, I think that was important. Look, we talked about it a lot since Aiden went down and what they would have to do to improve that pass rush. And I think when you looked at the last couple of games, didn't get a ton of pressure on Jordan Love, didn't get a lot of pressure on Mason Rudolph. And you're kind of thinking, okay, you survived those games, but as it gets tougher, it's going to get harder to survive if you can't impact the passer. So, look, there's Dan Campbell's talked about it. There's not a ton out there when it comes to pass rushers that teams are willing to trade at a price that you can find palatable. But I think they kind of threaded the needle there with a guy that has a history of getting after the passer, of being able to disrupt the pocket, isn't what he used to be, but is good enough and better than what they had to give them a shot. And if you can get Pascal back and all of a sudden you can get a Pascal in there and a Za'Darius in there and you got Reeder and you got Aleem and you can start subbing some other guys in, you can cobble this thing together. But I do think they had to do something, which they did.
Dan, I've had a bunch of conversations as it relates to Za'Darius Smith. A lot of people, they're like, oh, yeah, well, he's not an Aiden replacement, or how is he going to replace Aiden, or is he up to task to be the guy? And I've simply said, and I want to know where you stand on this, he doesn't have to be Aiden Hutchinson. All he has to do is, you know what, I'll let you take it. What does Za'Darius Smith have to be for this Detroit Lions team?
He has to be better than what they were yesterday before they got him. I mean, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to improve this team. You're not finding Aiden Hutchinson, and you needed to find the best guy that was available to you out there. And that's not Myles Garrett. That's not Max Crosby. That is apparently Za'Darius Smith. And I think if you looked at the guys that were dealt, he was the best one. I was reading Twitter the other day, and it's like pass rusher Baron Browning traded. And I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, he's got no sacks this year, 4.5 one year and 5 another year. And it's like, no disrespect or anything, but that's what you're calling a pass rusher that gets traded at the trade deadline. It's not like last year where maybe there was a Sweat or somebody like that. So, look, I think the question is, are they a better team, and did they address it as best as they could? And I think the answer is yes. They did the best they could in the situation where people aren't willing to just peel one off for you. And number two, absolutely, I think they are better than they were earlier this week when they did not have Za'Darius Smith. So, you know what? Trot him out there. I think at this point he's clearly your best edge rusher. That's what you wanted. And coupled with two guys that can collapse the pocket from the inside, let's see if they can get in there and disrupt it. I don't sit here and tell you there's any guarantees that this is a cure-all, but I give you a better odds on it now than I would have on Monday before they made a deal.
Hey, Dan, I've been perusing Twitter X and looking at the Lions. Obviously, Dan Campbell spoke. Looks like they're going to give Za'Darius Smith a few days off because he hasn't had a bye week. Get him some rest. Get him acclimated to this team. A, do you think he plays on Sunday? And B, I saw Josh Pascal. God bless him. He had a non-cancerous mass in his shoulder. He had it removed. He's starting to feel better, get stronger. So we get to see him back, and that's got to be a relief to that kid as well.
Yeah, it is. And look, with what he's been through, we know his story, having beaten cancer at Kentucky, and it's he was pretty open about the fact that it was something in a cancer check that they had to go in and take care of, and hopefully he's, as you said, ready to go this week, which Coach pretty much indicated. Look, in terms of first part of your question, Maz, was
Za'Darius Smith getting a few days off, getting him acclimated. No, will he play Sunday?
Coach talking about that. Yeah, I think he will. Look, there's two things he needs to know how to do. You need to set the edge, and you need to get the quarterback. And maybe they limit his snaps. He's on a snap count. They only have him in there in passing situations. Whatever it is, I think he will know enough by Sunday night to be ready to go. He's a veteran in this league. He understands what he needs to do in certain defenses. And Aaron Glenn's obviously a tremendous communicator. And their defensive line coach is one that everybody loves. So, look, I think he will be ready to go in my mind. I'd be shocked if he didn't play. Obviously, he doesn't have the whole grasp of the defense by that point, but enough that you could utilize him certainly in some packages where he can come in and hopefully make an impact.
Hey, Dan, when I was younger and I was running track, my dad always told me proper preparation prevents poor performance. And I think that's what you saw out of the Detroit Lions this past Sunday. They were properly prepared. We talked about on the show, and I heard the sentiments echo from throwing with wet balls to practicing, catching, switching your gloves, cleats to 7 steps, the whole 9 yards. Just talk about Dan Campbell in terms of preparing this team. And I think taking that next step as one of the best coaches in the NFL, and we'll see what happens at the end of the year. But proper preparation is what made them look light years above Green Bay, in my opinion.
I think that's one of the beautiful things, Braylon, that goes across every business that anybody's in. Preparation is everything.
Yeah.
It eliminates anxiety. It gets you ready for any situation. And sometimes it takes people a while to learn that. But I think it's one of the biggest things that can do that can make you successful in any walk of life. So I very much agree with your dad. And obviously, everything that he did speaks for itself. Listen, I think if you go back to last Monday when they were turning the page from Tennessee and getting ready for Green Bay, Campbell was asked about it. He said shoes. I think everybody kind of went second. He goes, we got to have the right shoes to play on that field. And that's that's 7 days before the game. Wow. And I think that's the first thing that his mind went to. So he was thinking about that already, and he's right. They had to be ready to play with that thing. They had to be ready to play on that field, whether it was just grass and not rainy or rainy and nasty like it was. You had to be ready for it because it is clearly different than all but 3 games they're going to play this year, which are indoors. So, look, I think he's proven himself as one of the top coaches in this league. Still, there's a lot to be written about his success, but his ability to prepare his team, and that's mentally, physically, equipment-wise, strategy-wise, his ability to do that every single week is, I think, something that has set him apart and allowed him to find the success that he's had.
Dan, I want to piggyback on your Lambeau conditions. On the other side of the coin, from everything that I heard, I had some people that were in Lambeau, and they said by halftime they were leaving. And once again, we took over their stadium. And we're seeing that for almost a second straight year now. We're seeing prices for Lions games on the road skyrocketing. A, people are interested, but B, Michiganders travel hard, and we know that they're filling these stadiums. What does this mean? What is your experience when you're seeing these Lions fans show out all over the country? What does it mean to you as a broadcaster, and what does it mean to the Lions on the field when they start a game?
Well, I think there's a bigger picture there that I've talked about many times, and people, will come up to me and say, man, I'm so happy for you that this team is having success. And I always say, no, I'm happy for you because these fans have put so much into this team and oftentimes just gotten a gut punch back. They haven't gotten back what they've put into it. Well, now they are. And what it says to me is these are the same fans that have been there all the time. Maybe some of them kind of drifted and then came back, but they've just been waiting for something that they could sink their teeth into. This has always been a phenomenal fan base, filling Ford Field when this wasn't a good football team. Well, now, there's even more reason to engage, and they're giving them that. And I think, going back to that Kansas City game last year where we walked out in that first game of the season and were just blown away by how many Lions fans were there on a night when the Chiefs were raising their banner. So, look, nothing surprises me anymore, but I will share this. I have so many memories of being in Green Bay and seeing the Lions lose, 38-10 or 38-17 or year after year getting beaten there. And looking around at the end of the game, and none of the Packer fans had left. I mean, it was crazy. I'm like, your team is so comfortably ahead and none of you have left yet. Well, I did kind of draw the contrast this week of looking around and seeing many Packer fans had left. And suddenly, man, it was just blue. And you saw how many Lions fans were there. And you could see it during the game, even when the Packer fans were there. But it really stood out towards the end when it was clear the Lions had won, clear the Packers weren't coming back, clear it was a nasty day. And if you didn't want to be out there, you didn't have to be. You probably wanted to just take the exit. And that's what they did. So listen, it continues to happen at so many away games where these fans just travel. And, man, you mentioned it's not cheap. From buying the ticket to buying a plane ticket to buying a hotel room and whatever else it takes, rent a car, meals, whatever it is, man, they're invested in this team, and it's really cool to see them getting something back from it and being able to enjoy the success.
Hey, Dan, what was your thoughts on the Brian Branch hit, the ejection, the double bird going off, 30 yards in penalties, then Kirby Joseph stepping up and breaking their backs. Then they come back, get the ball in the second half, score, ball game over. I mean, this team, after Hutchinson goes down, they bury Dallas even more than they were. It just seems that they're picking each other up. Do you think – I don't even know what my question is, but I just want to know about the Brian Branch. What was your thoughts on that? Was it worthy of New York calling and saying, get this guy out of here?
Yeah, I'm going to assume you asked a couple of questions in there, Matt, so I'm going to give you a couple of answers.
That's par for the course, Dan.
I didn't understand that, and neither did TJ, and neither did Lomas. And look, we've seen it was a penalty. There's no question about it. He went helmet to helmet. That was a penalty on him.
Yes.
But none of us could remember New York calling in and ejecting somebody. And that came, we were trying to Google the rule and figure out what the heck's going on there. And then we got word that it did come from New York. And I think there's probably something to what Dan Campbell said, that they're really locked in on that 425 game where they know they have a massive audience.
Yep.
They're trying to put, their best picture out there and
keep it close rule, Dan?
Sponsorships.
Mm-hmm. Keep it close in terms of the game.
That's the only way they can try and keep it close, right?
Yeah, no, I don't think it was that.
No.
I think, listen, they're constantly trying to put out there that they are invested in player safety. And I think when you have a 425 window game that's drawing millions and millions of viewers, maybe they did want to put out there that we're going to be careful with hits like this. I'm just making the point that we've seen worse hits than that where guys weren't ejected. So that felt like something new to us.
Yep.
To your point, Maz, about this team being able to open things up, look, they're playing really opportunistic football right now. You go back to that Tennessee game, they had 5 drives of 26 yards or less, all for touchdowns, which is insane. And then add on a 90-yard touchdown return to that. They're really good offensively. They're maximizing their possessions. The defense is giving them good field position. Jack Fox is costing the other team's field position with his punting. And then when you get a pick six, that obviously tacks something on really quickly. So I think it's all adding up to some lopsided scores, just that they're really tough to stop. And if you give them an extra possession, you might force down. Guys, it's not a lot different than what we used to see here when the Lions had a terrible defense. If Stafford had an empty possession, he usually got the ball back down by 14. Because he was down by 7 when he got it. If they punted it away, chances are they gave up another touchdown, then he was down by 14. And it would snowball from there. Every mistake you made allowed the other team to extend their lead. And you kind of get the feeling that's what it is with the Lions right now. That offense is so good, so efficient, so high-powered, that if you're not scoring with them, you're going to find yourself down a couple of scores.
Great.
Hey, Dan, this is just this is a statement, not a question. KG had one behind me, but I compare it to the greatest show on turf. Look, they're the most watched team in the NFL. They're the most bet on team in the NFL, but they still have a younger audience. They still have a lot of sponsors. And like you said, they've convinced that this is a safe game. We don't have those things. So Brian Branch just happened to be on the wrong team at the wrong time as it relates to we don't want to see this because we got to let you and anybody knows that comes behind you. We're not going for that. We're not going for that. So I think that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, and look, I've thought about that comparison because those teams were so good and scored so often. In full respect to them, because they won a Super Bowl, went back to another. So we'll see where the Lions go from here. But the efficiency that this offense is playing with right now is something else. And look, we'll see where it goes from here for Brian Branch. I just felt that was something that we hadn't seen a lot of, and if that's the way they're going to do it from here on out, it's kind of a different game. But bottom line is this, Brian needs to be more careful about how he's coming in there, and that's for every defensive back in this league because they're going to call the penalty. And, the double bird, you don't want to lose your cool like
Can't
that.
do that.
It's not a great situation, but you got to find a way to just turn and go.
I flicked off Cleveland, so trust me, I get it. Trust me, I get it. Go ahead, KG.
Hey, and Dan, I got to bring it to this week. Lions, Texans, Sunday Night Football in Houston. And, we're looking at this game, and it looks a lot more winnable than it did maybe at the beginning of the season now that we're actually in Week 10. Houston, they're a good team, but they've been kind of inconsistent, also dealing with injuries as well. They're very talented still. They may be getting Nico Collins back. What do you think the Lions need to do in order to go into Houston and come out with a victory?
Well, find some way to pressure Stroud because he has been pressurable this year. They have gotten after him at quarterback. Yeah, they got to find some way to get after him, take advantage of that weakness on that team and find a way to impact him. Yeah, they have had some injuries at wide receiver, but, Mixon looks terrific. He's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. Got to slow that thing down. And the Lions have been giving up some yards on the ground recently, so they got to get back to being that kind of run defense that they can be, and that's where maybe Za'Darius Smith can help you a little bit more setting the edge and they had lost some of that with some of the guys that were gone. But, it's like I was looking at it the other day. It's like I thought we'd be rid of Danielle Hunter, and now we got to play him again. And that's one of the guys that I feel like has terrorized me more than pretty much any player that the Lions have gone up against for years. So
that is a fact.
Look, and Will Anderson's a great young player. So they got their work cut out for him. But it's the same recipe. You got to go in there, play clean. Don't turn it over. Be very good in the red zone. Don't leave any points out there. And you got to be good situationally. And when they get in the red zone, look, Lions are doing a great job of stopping teams when they get in there. They're doing a great job on third down, so you got to continue to do that. The team is good, but the recipe for the Lions doesn't change. They have a way they play football and can win. They just got to continue doing that.
There's another name for you that used to cause havoc, and that was Julius Peppers, man. And he did it for 2 teams in the same division. He was a monster. I hated playing against that guy.
No doubt.
Last question for us, man. We're going to let you get out of here. We know you're busy, and we appreciate your time on Wednesdays. Is Taylor Decker. Been watching the play of Taylor Decker this season. It seems to, with injury, it seems like he's having some struggles. He's having some problems with certain defensive rush. Is this something that we're keeping an eye on that is bothering you, or is this more along the line of him being injured, him getting back healthy? Is this something that you're watching? Because I have seen it from game to game. He's causing some situations where Jared Goff is getting some extra pressure off that left side.
Yeah, I usually listen to Lomas and TJ, and they've called his name a couple times in terms of having some issues out there, and I defer to those guys because they both played the position. TJ was a guard and Lomas was a tackle. So, look, I think that offensive line is what gave them confidence in that game against Green Bay. I think that offensive line is when you walk out on that field in those conditions, you believe those 5 guys are going to help you win that game because they're going to be better than the 5 guys on the other side. And look, they were messing up snaps and having issues on their offensive line. So, yeah, there may be a couple times this year where Decker's had some issues, and maybe we're finding best rusher goes on the other side because they're not wanting to face Penei Sewell. So he may have to deal with that as well. But, look, I'll still take those 5 guys playing together at any point. But there's no question, Braylon, at any time that's something that you keep an eye on if you get the sense that there's been a couple. And as I said, my guys a couple times have pointed out that Taylor's had some issues. But I go back to what I saw on Sunday, and I think their running game and I think Jared Goff felt really good about the way things went with those guys up front.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Dan.
He's one of the best to do it, and he happens to be one of the best people that I know. He is Dan Miller, Fox 2. We appreciate you, and we will see you next week. Go Lions.
Have fun, Dan.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks,
See you,
Dan.
Dan.